In this interview, I'll be discussing a new book that's been written by Dr Ruth Bender called Corporate Financial Strategy. Ruth, can you tell us why the world needs another book on corporate financial strategy?
Oh, well, it doesn't need another book on corporate finance. My argument is corporate financial strategy is different, right? There's loads of really good textbooks there on corporate finance. But what the textbooks tend to do is take a very academic view and quite reasonably situate it in the finance world. Whereas what we're saying with this is financial strategy is also about how the finance of the business links with its corporate strategy. And we're taking it into the realm of, still for academics, but a lot for practitioners, and saying, look, this is what happens, this is how it works. So I think we do need a new book.
And this is the 4th edition now. Can you perhaps tell us how it's evolved?
Well, I didn't write the first edition. The first edition was done by Keith Ward, who was a professor of corporate finance at Cranfield. It was a lovely book. I remember when I was doing my MBA, I was sitting there in the corner reading this book, and I'd say to people, hey, listen to this is great. I think they thought I was mad, but be that as it may. And then I joined faculty, and early 2000s, Keith was asked by his publishers to write a second edition, and he didn't want to. So he said to me, if you do most of the writing, it can go out as Bender and Ward, which was very generous of him. And so we did the 2nd and 3rd editions that way, and Keith's now retired completely, so the 4th edition is just me. But it has a long pedigree of being used in universities around the world and also by corporates.
And perhaps could you explain a bit about what makes this book different?
There's an awful lot of books which deal deep into the theory, and my background is as a practitioner. And I wanted to say, look, this is how it actually works. Take this theory and don't just leave it in the realm of equations. Actually say, this is what happens. And the idea of it was, when you finish your degree, you go off into the business world, and at some point you're faced with an acquisition or a flotation or whatever it is, and you'll have loads of professional advisors. But you needn't be just reliant on everything they tell you. What you've also got is some knowledge that says, okay, I know what's meant to be happening. Let me benchmark how we're doing against what I know about the practice.
So perhaps could you give us an example then of how the book works?
Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples. The first one's on valuations. If I can get technical for a minute. When you go out into practice, one of the most common ways to value a company is based on multiples, by which you say, for example, Twitter must be worth this much because Facebook is worth that much. And I can give you, and I do give you, dozens and dozens of reasons why that's a really lousy way to value a company. But the fact is everybody does it. And so what I wanted to do was say, look, this isn't necessarily the best way to value a company, but this is how it works. And you can go onto the book's website and actually download a spreadsheet that says, look, this is how it works, play around with it. And I do then go on to say, but actually a much better way to value companies is this way, which is academically pure and technically much more sensible. Oh, and you can download a spreadsheet for this too. So that's one where I just wanted to get practice in. And then a second example is on flotations. And again, there's a lot written about flotations. But when I looked at it, I thought that the decision to float a company, to list its shares on a stock exchange, that's a corporate finance decision. But the actual act of doing it, you're selling shares, that's marketing. So the way I analyse that is in terms of a model I borrowed from my marketing colleagues, the 7 Ps of marketing. And we talk about, okay, what price do you set it at? How do you promote it? Where is the place that you sell it? All that sort of thing. So we link it together with the business world and say, selling shares, you have to make them attractive. This is how you do it. And by the way, these are the people involved. This is the regulation, that sort of thing.
Now, the book sounds extremely practitioner focused. Can it be used for people on degree programs?
I do hope so, because I use it. Yeah, I designed the book originally around my own teaching, and I teach MBAs and I teach corporates. And with the MBAs, they've done core finance. By the time they hit the corporate financial strategy electives, they've done core finance, they know the equations, they understand that sort of thing. And what we're doing with them is we're saying, look, you need to extend the theory a bit, but you need to take all that theory and now apply it. Our Cranfield strapline is knowledge into practice, and that's what we try to do. So my ideal exam for the degree students, which I've never been allowed to do, is just they walk into an exam hall, we give them a copy of the Financial Times, and we say, okay, analyse that. You've got all the theory behind you, you understand what's meant to happen in practice, use the ideas we're giving you, and actually produce a coherent analysis of what these companies are doing. So the idea is it gives you a deep level of understanding if you're doing a degree course, whereas if you're doing a corporate course and you just want to be able to say, okay, what does it mean to do an acquisition, you can dive straight into that and just look at that bit.
Okay, so for somebody who's looking to pick up on the book, then perhaps you could tell us how the book is actually structured.
Okay, it's in 4 parts, and the way we've structured it is that we've actually designed it so you can read each part separately, or each chapter separately, or each section. So you don't need to read the whole thing from page 1 up to page 300 and whatever. And if you take part one is basically setting the background. So what we've got is we're saying, look, there's various models you need to understand. Here is a nice model on how you drive value in a business. And here is a nice model on how financial strategy ought to work, the things you're looking at. Basically, you know, how much should we be borrowing? How much should we be paying in dividend? Should we float on a public market? These are the sort of things you're looking at. And so we link those together and we say, if this is your corporate strategy, this is what your financial strategy should be. Within part 1, we also look in some detail at, if this is your share price, what's the market expecting from you? Because there's an awful lot of mystique about share prices, and we try to unravel them. So that sets out part 1. And then in part 1, one of the models we have is a lifecycle model that says as a company moves through the different stages of its life, its financial strategy has to change. So part 2 says, okay, this is what you do if you're a startup. This is what you do if you're a growth company. For a mature company, you need a different financial strategy. And if you're in decline, these are the sort of things you need to think of. And within that, we have models that talk about venture capital and that sort of thing. Part 3 moves on again, and what we do is we look at all the financial instruments. Actually, hang on that. You can't look at all the financial instruments because as soon as you'd finished writing it, somebody would invent a new one. So the way we do it is we say, look, if you're designing a financial instrument, there's only 3 things you can play with. You can manage risk, you can give people a yield, a dividend or interest, and you can give them a capital gain. And we look at all the different ways those can fit together. And we talk about the basic financial instruments so that you could deconstruct a financial instrument on that. And then the last part of the book just deals with transactions. So this is what a float means, this is an acquisition, this is raising private equity, this is a turnaround in case you need it, this is international transactions, and then the last section is on working capital, just because when I was a practitioner, one of the biggest problems my clients had was mismanaging working capital, so we talk about that as well. So that's the coherent whole of it.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Ruth, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.